There is a place on Earth
where silence has weight, where the air itself feels ancient, older than language, older than memory. A place buried beneath more than 2 miles of ice. Ice that has been falling, pressing, compressing for 2.5 million years. It is the world's largest island, yet fewer than 57,000 people call it home. It holds enough frozen water to reshape every coastline on the planet, and it is vanishing. For more than a century, the most powerful nation on Earth has tried, again and again, to buy it. But what lies beneath the ice, and what endures above it, is not for sale. This is Greenland. The numbers defy comprehension. More than 2 million square kilometers of land, 3 times the size of Texas. An ice sheet spanning the distance from New York to Miami, and nearly as wide as France. At its thickest, the ice reaches 3,488 meters, taller than the Alps. The weight of it has pressed the bedrock beneath 1,500 meters below sea level, a hidden basin, scooped and hollowed by the slow patience of frozen time. If all of it melted, the oceans would rise 7.4 meters. Every coastal city on Earth would drown. More than 7% of all fresh water on the planet sits locked inside this single sheet of ice. It has been here since before modern humans walked out of Africa, since before the first stone tools were sharpened in the Rift Valley. The ice remembers what we have forgotten, and it is here, in the frozen interior at the summit of the ice sheet, that scientists have drilled into time itself. The Neem ice core reached 2,537 meters deep, each layer a year, each bubble a breath of ancient atmosphere trapped and sealed. At the very bottom, they found air from 128,500 years ago, the Eemian interglacial, when Greenland was 8 degrees warmer than today. Yet the ice sheet survived, diminished, yes, thinner, but still present, still enduring. The most remarkable discovery was not what was lost, but what remained. Further down, even older ice holds secrets no one expected. Traces of plant DNA preserved for millions of years. Evidence that beneath this frozen desert, forests once grew, rivers once ran. The coldest temperature ever recorded in the Northern Hemisphere came from this ice sheet, negative 69.6 degrees Celsius at the Klink Research Station on December 22, 1991. Cold enough to freeze breath into crystals before it leaves the mouth. Cold enough to silence everything. And yet, even here, life finds a way through. The town of Kangerlussuaq sits at the edge of the ice, a gateway between the frozen interior and the living coast. Its name means Big Fjord. Its population barely reaches 400. Built in 1941 as an American military base called Bluey West 8, Kangerlussuaq still carries the geometry of wartime purpose. Long runways, low buildings, a landscape stripped to function. But today, its purpose has shifted. A 51-kilometer road, Greenland's only road to the ice sheet, runs east from the town to a place called Point 660, named for its elevation in meters. At the end of that road, the ice begins. White horizon, unbroken. In the valleys surrounding Kangerlussuaq, something ancient moves through the dust and scrub. Musk ox. More than 10,000 of them, descended from just 27 calves introduced in the 1960s. These animals have barely changed in 40,000 years. They endured the last ice age. Their guard hairs hang nearly to the ground, swaying like heavy curtains, while beneath them grows Inughuit, one of the warmest natural fibers on Earth. When threatened, musk ox form a circle, calves in the center, horns facing outward. They do not run. They stand, a strategy older than civilization. When the threat passes, the musk ox lower their heads and return to grazing, their massive bodies moving through the Arctic scrub with a patience that suggests they have always been here and intend to remain. Above Kangerlussuaq, the skies are among the clearest in the Arctic. More than 300 cloudless nights each year. The northern lights appear here with a frequency and intensity found almost nowhere else on the planet. The Inuit call them Arsanarit, those who play ball, spirits of the dead, kicking a walrus skull across the sky. But Greenland's human story begins long before the lights had a name. For 4,500 years, waves of people have come to this island, arriving across the frozen straits, following seals and caribou, carrying nothing but what they could strap to a sled or fit inside a skin boat. The Saqqaq people arrived first, around 2500 BCE, tracing a migration path from Siberia across the Bering Land Bridge through Arctic Canada and finally to Greenland's western shores. In 2010, scientists extracted DNA from a 4,000-year-old clump of Saqqaq hair preserved in permafrost. It became the first complete ancient human genome ever reconstructed. A man with brown eyes, dark skin, dry earwax, and a tendency toward baldness. A face from the deep past, rebuilt from a lock of frozen hair. The Saqqaq vanished around 800 BCE. They were replaced by the Dorset culture, artists of extraordinary skill who carved miniature figures and haunting ivory masks, but who lacked two technologies that would seal their fate. They had no bow and arrow, and they had no dogs. Inuit legends remember them as the Thulegate, giants, taller and stronger than ordinary people, but easily frightened. The Thulegate, the stories say, would flee rather than fight. Then came the Thule. Around 1200 CE, they swept eastward from Alaska, carrying dog sleds, toggling harpoons, drag floats for whale hunting, and the most remarkable invention in Arctic history, the kayak. Their migration from Alaska to Greenland took perhaps a single century. They are the direct ancestors of every Inuit person in Greenland today. But they were not alone on the island. In the year 982, a man with red hair and a violent temper was banished from Iceland for murder. His name was Eric Thorvaldsson. History would call him Eric the Red. Sentenced to 3 years of exile, he sailed west into waters no European had mapped. He found an enormous island, ice-covered, wind-scoured, but with pockets of green along the southern fjords where grass grew and sheep could graze. When his exile ended, he returned to Iceland with a plan. He called the island Greenland. The old sagas record his reasoning with brutal honesty. He said it would encourage people to go there, that the land had a good name. It may have been the world's first real estate marketing scheme. 25 ships departed Iceland. Only 14 survived the crossing, battered by storms, scattered by currents, turned back by ice. 400 settlers stumbled ashore near the southern tip of the island. Eric established his estate at a place called Brattahlid and declared himself paramount chieftain. Today, the site of Brattahlid is called Saqqaq. 39 people live there now. A reconstructed Norse longhouse stands on the ancient foundations. Low stone walls, turf roof, smoke-darkened timber. Beside it sits a tiny church, a replica of Theodhild's chapel, built by Eric's wife after her conversion to Christianity. It was likely the first Christian church in the Americas, raised 500 years before Columbus set sail. The surrounding region earned the name Garden of Greenland for its relative warmth. 53 sheep farms still operate in South Greenland today, one of the only places on the island where agriculture is possible. At their peak, the Norse settlements held between 2,000 and 5,000 people across 500 farms. They built churches, they traded walrus ivory with medieval Europe, they established a bishop's seat and sent tithes to Rome. And then they disappeared. The western settlement, closer to modern Nuuk, went silent first. The Little Ice Age brought colder winters, stormier seas, and longer ice seasons after 1300. Trade ships came less often. The last bishop died in 1378. No replacement was ever sent. Walrus ivory, the Norse colony's primary export, collapsed in value as Russian walrus and African elephant ivory flooded European markets. The economics of survival shifted beneath their feet. Yet, the Inuit thrived. They had the technology for this colder world: dog sleds, kayaks, sealskin clothing. The Norse, stubbornly, never adopted Inuit methods. The last written record of Norse Greenland is dated September 16th, 1408, a wedding at Hvalsey Church. Thorstein Olafsson married Sigrid Bjornsdottir before witnesses. The couple later returned to Iceland. No one else did. Today, Hvalsey Church stands as the best-preserved Norse ruin in Greenland. 4 stone walls reaching nearly 6 meters high. No roof, no congregation. Just wind passing through a doorway that has stood open for 600 years. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2017, it is both a monument and a question with no answer. Between 1408 and 1721, more than 300 years of silence. No letters, no visitors, no record of any kind. When Danish-Norwegian priest Hans Egild finally arrived on July 3, 1721, hoping to find Norse descendants in need of Protestant conversion after the Reformation, he found only Kalalit, Inuit people who had never heard of Christianity, never seen a European, never imagined such visitors would come. Egild established a settlement he named Godphobe, Good Hope. It would become Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. Faced with a culture that had no concept of bread, Egild adapted the Lord's Prayer for his new congregation. Give us this day our daily bread became, give us this day our daily seal. A 1733 smallpox epidemic devastated the Kalalit population. Egild's wife Gertrude nursed the sick until she herself fell ill and died. A Greenlandic man told her in what may be the most quietly devastating sentence in Arctic history. "You have been kinder to us than we have been to one another." In 1776, Denmark assumed full trade monopoly over Greenland. The island became a closed colony, sealed from the outside world for 2 centuries. But the people remained, the ice remained, and beneath both, something older than empires continued to shape the land. Nuuk today is one of the world's smallest capitals, just over 20,000 people, more than a third of Greenland's entire population, living in a city that feels caught between centuries. Colorful colonial buildings line the old harbor, yellow, red, blue, built in an era when paint identified function. The Lutheran Cathedral, the trading post, the governor's residence. Behind them rise apartment blocks and the modern glass of Nuuk Center, Greenland's tallest building. Mount Seabed dominates the skyline at 1,210 meters. Its name means the flat one, though from the harbor it looks anything but. Nuuk may also be the most indigenous capital on Earth. Approximately 90% of Greenland's population carries Inughuit heritage. The Greenlandic language, Kalaallisut, became the sole official language in 2009, replacing Danish. Inside the Greenland National Museum, in a quiet room with controlled lighting, rest the Qilakitsoq mummies. 8 bodies from the 15th century, 6 women and 2 children, discovered in 1978 by 2 hunters near Uummannaq. They were perfectly preserved by the dry, freezing Arctic air. Skin, hair, clothing, even the intricate tattoo lines on one woman's face, all intact across 500 years. One body was an infant, no more than 6 months old, buried alive according to Inuit custom, because no other woman could nurse it after its mother died. The practice reflected not cruelty, but the brutal arithmetic of Arctic survival. South of Nuuk, the landscape softens. The ice retreats, green appears, not the green of Eric's marketing, but real grass, real shrubs, scattered wildflowers during the brief Arctic summer. On the island of Uummannaq, hot springs rise from the earth at 37 to 38 degrees Celsius, the only naturally warm baths in Greenland. Norse settlers discovered them 1,000 years ago. They remain one of the few places on the island where a person can sit in warm water while watching icebergs drift past. The springs are not volcanic. Greenland has no active volcanoes. The heat comes from deep friction, the slow grinding of tectonic forces far beneath the ancient bedrock. Further north along the western coast, where the ice sheet pushes its frozen fingers toward the sea, lies a town whose name translates simply as icebergs, Ilulissat. "5,149 people live here, sharing the town with an almost equal number of sled dogs, between 3,500 and 5,000 huskies tied to stakes on the outskirts, filling the Arctic air with a constant low chorus of whining and barking. The dogs outnumber the cars. In winter, the town's main roads become dog sled highways. But Ilulissat's fame rests not on its people or its dogs. It rests on what moves through the fjord just south of town, one of the most productive sources of icebergs on the planet. Saqqaq. This glacier moves at 40 meters per day, 15 kilometers per year. It carves between 35 and 46 cubic kilometers of ice annually, more than any glacier outside Antarctica. UNESCO designated the Ilulissat Ice Fjord a World Heritage Site in 2004. The fjord extends 55 kilometers inland, 6 kilometers wide, choked with ice so massive that individual bergs run aground on the fjord floor and remain stuck for years before breaking free. When they finally calf, when a piece of glacier the size of a skyscraper separates from the face, the sound carries for miles. Visitors describe it as thunder, as an explosion, as something between a cannon and an earthquake. Then, silence. Then, the slow rolling of waves as the newborn iceberg settles into the water. Its mass extends 7 times deeper below the surface than what is visible above, a floating mountain of which only the peak is seen. Over weeks and months, the berg changes shape. Meltwater carves channels and arches through the ice. Wind sculpts curves and overhangs. Some bergs develop a translucent blue so deep it seems to contain its own light source. Air bubbles compressed over millennia, releasing wavelengths of blue as the ice melts. Scientists believe an iceberg born from this glacier sank the Titanic in April 1912. Bergs from Kujalleq take up to 5 years to drift south through Baffin Bay, past Labrador, and into the North Atlantic shipping lanes. The ice that killed 1,500 people may have begun its journey here, in silence, in darkness, carving from a wall of frozen time. More than 60,000 visitors come to Ilulissat each year. They stand at the edge of the ice fjord in silence, watching towers of blue-white ice drift past like slow cathedrals. Some stay for hours, some weep. Some simply stare, unable to reconcile the beauty with what they are actually watching, the slow, irreversible dissolution of a world. The Ilulissat Ice Fjord Center, opened in 2021, curves along the ridge above the fjord like a wing. Designed by architect Dorte Mandrup, its lines echo the landscape, low, sweeping, refusing to compete with the ice below. Inside, the silence is deliberate. Outside, the icebergs continue their patient procession toward open water. The bergs that leave Ilulissat enter Disco Bay, a vast body of water between the mainland and Disco Island, one of the richest marine ecosystems in the Arctic. Humpback whales breach here in summer, their dark backs arcing against the white geometry of drifting ice. Fishermen set nets for Greenland halibut in waters so cold the catch freezes before it reaches the boat. Some icebergs linger in the bay for months, grounded on shallow banks, their undersides melting imperceptibly, while their surfaces sparkle in low Arctic light. Others pass through quickly, carried by currents into Baffin Bay, beginning the long southward drift that may, in 2 years or 3 or 5, deliver them to the shipping lanes of the North Atlantic. Each one is a clock. Each one is a countdown. And each one is beautiful in a way that makes forgetting what it means almost impossible. North of Ilulissat, the coast turns wilder. The settlements grow smaller. The distances between them stretch into days of travel by dog sled. And then, rising from the frozen sea like something from a myth, a mountain shaped like a heart. Nuuk. The town of 1,300 people sits beneath the peak of 1,170 meters, two summits pressed together, forming a silhouette that has been drawn, photographed, and painted more than any other landmark in Greenland. Nuuk means heart-shaped in Kalaallisut. The name is not metaphor, it is description. Every April 2nd, mushers from across North Greenland gather here for the annual dog sledding championship, a race across frozen fjords in temperatures that can reach -40. The dogs run with a focus that borders on fury, their breath hanging in the air behind them like smoke from small engines. In town, children write letters to Santa Claus at Nuuk's post office, one of the few places in the world where Danish and Greenlandic tradition holds that this is where he lives. Not Finland, not the North Pole. Here, beneath a heart-shaped mountain surrounded by ice. Beneath the waters surrounding Greenland, life moves on a different timescale entirely. The narwhal, Monodon monoceros, the unicorn of the sea. Between 85,000 and 123,000 of them inhabit Arctic waters, and Greenland is their stronghold. The tusk is not a horn, it is a tooth, the upper left canine, elongated into a spiraling spear that can reach 3 meters. It contains millions of nerve endings, sensing water temperature, salinity, pressure, a sensory organ disguised as a weapon. Narwhals dive to 1,600 meters, nearly a mile beneath the surface, into darkness so complete that light has never reached it. Females live to 100 years, males to 84. They have swum these same fjords since long before the first humans set foot on Greenland's shore. In Saqqaq, the northernmost Inuit community on Earth, narwhal hunting is still practiced from traditional skin kayaks. The hunt is not sport, it is sustenance, ceremony, and identity, bound into a single act. But the narwhal is not the most ancient creature in these waters. The Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus, is the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. Scientists have confirmed lifespans of 250 to more than 500 years. The oldest individual ever studied was 392 years old, give or take 120, born possibly in the year 1630, before Newton, before Bach, before the last Norse in Greenland had been dead for 2 centuries. These sharks reach sexual maturity at approximately 150 years of age. They grow less than 1 centimeter per year, 6.5 meters long, moving through water as cold as -2 degrees Celsius at depths of 2,200 meters. They are not fast, they are not dramatic, they simply persist, outliving everything around them, including the civilizations that have risen and fallen on the shores above. A Greenland shark alive today may have been born when Shakespeare was writing his final plays. It may have been swimming beneath the ice when the last Norse Greenlanders vanished, when Hans Egede arrived, when the American flag was raised over Thule. It was here before all of them. It will be here after. On the ice above, the polar bear, Nuuk, patrols a kingdom that is shrinking beneath its feet. Males reach 3 meters in length and weigh more than 800 kilograms. They are the largest land predators on Earth, and they are entirely dependent on one thing: sea ice. Without it, they cannot hunt ringed seals. Without seals, they starve. In North and Northeast Greenland, where the ice still holds, Nuuk still rules. But the ice that holds grows thinner each year, breaks earlier each spring, forms later each autumn. In the waters between the fjords, humpback whales surface and blow, more than 6,000 of them in Greenlandic waters alone. 14 to 17 meters long, their 5-meter flippers are the longest limbs of any animal on the planet. Each spring, they migrate more than 6,000 kilometers from the Dominican Republic to feed in these cold, nutrient-rich waters. On land, caribou move across the western tundra in herds that can number in the tens of thousands. Approximately 100,000 animals, the only mammals on Earth capable of digesting lichen. They run at 80 kilometers per hour when threatened, faster than any Arctic predator can follow. But it is the relationship between Greenlanders and their animals, not as observers but as partners, that defines life here. The sled dog. The Greenland dog, Grønlandshund. For more than 1,000 years, these animals have carried hunters across frozen fjords, through blizzards, over sea ice so thin it flexed with each stride. Today, between 13,000 and 15,000 sled dogs remain in Greenland. 20 years ago, there were 25,000 to 30,000. The population has more than halved. The decline tracks the retreat of sea ice. Less ice means shorter hunting seasons. Shorter seasons mean fewer dogs can be justified. Snowmobiles have replaced teams in many communities. The economics are clear. A snowmobile needs fuel. A dog team needs daily feeding, year-round, whether working or not. But a snowmobile does not know the ice. A snowmobile cannot sense a hidden crevasse or stop at the edge of thin ice before its driver even knows the danger is there. By law, sled dogs are permitted only north of the Arctic Circle and in East Greenland. No other breeds are allowed in these regions, a legal protection of genetic purity that has preserved the line for centuries. These dogs tolerate temperatures of -57 degrees Celsius. They sleep outside, curled in the snow, their breath crystallizing on their fur. And then there is the kayak. The kayak was invented here, or in the waters nearby, more than 4,000 years ago. It is one of the most perfect pieces of technology ever designed by human hands. Each kayak is built to fit one body and one body only. The length equals 3 times the span of outstretched arms, roughly 5.2 meters. The width equals the builder's hips plus 2 fists, approximately 50 to 56 centimeters. The frame is driftwood or whalebone. The skin is stitched seal hide, waterproofed with whale fat. The Eskimo roll, the ability to right the kayak after capsizing without leaving the cockpit, is not a trick. It is a survival technique. In Arctic waters, immersion kills in minutes. In Saqqaq, traditional skin kayaks are still required for narwhal hunting. Not by choice, by necessity. The skin boat moves through the water in near silence. A fiberglass hull would alert the narwhal and end the hunt before it began. The hunter paddles alone or in a small group between flows of sea ice in water that would kill an unprotected human in 4 minutes. The harpoon is thrown by hand. The drag float, a sealed sealskin bladder, prevents the narwhal from diving to escape. The kill must be clean, or the animal is lost. It is not primitive, it is precise, and it works. The old technologies persist not from nostalgia, but because nothing better has been invented. In a heated community hall or on the open tundra under midnight sun, a drummer stands alone. A single-frame drum, a circle of stretched skin mounted on driftwood, struck from behind with a wooden beater. The pisek, the drum dance. This tradition is at least 4,500 years old. It predates every European language still spoken. It predates Rome, Athens, Jerusalem. The drum and the song carry stories, settle disputes, welcome strangers, mourn the dead. When 18th century missionaries arrived, they banned it. They called it heathen. For 2 centuries, the drum dance survived only in North Greenland and East Greenland, the places too remote for missionaries to reach. In 2021, UNESCO inscribed Greenlandic drum dancing on the Intangible Cultural Heritage List. Today, it is performed at National Day celebrations on June 21st, at parliamentary openings, at cultural festivals across the island. What the missionaries tried to silence has returned. The drum still sounds, the voice still rises, the stories still pass from one generation to the next. The food, too, carries meaning that reaches beyond nutrition. Beneath all of this, the food, the songs, the hunts, the dogs, lies a single concept, a word that has no equivalent in any European language. Sila. Sila means air, it means weather, it means sky, breath, spirit, and consciousness, all at once. It is the formless primary substance of everything that exists. In the old belief, souls were made from Sila. The world was made from Sila, the wind that scours the ice sheet and the thought that crosses a hunter's mind were, fundamentally, the same thing. A famous Inuit saying captures the weight of this understanding. The great peril of our existence lies in the fact that our diet consists entirely of souls. Every seal taken, every narwhal hunted, every bird pulled from the air, each one possessed a spirit. Each kill required respect, ritual, and gratitude, not as performance, but as recognition of a debt that could never be fully repaid. Today, 85 to 93% of Greenlanders are members of the Lutheran Church. But the old beliefs have not been replaced. They have been absorbed. Christianity sits on top of Sila like snow on bedrock, present, visible, but not as deep. On the opposite side of the island, Greenland's wild east coast, where the ice pack presses against the shore for most of the year, the land opens into something almost incomprehensible. Scoresby Sund, the world's largest fjord system. Its main body stretches 110 kilometers from the coast. Its longest branch reaches 350 kilometers inland, farther than the distance from London to Paris. The total area of the fjord system spans 38,000 square kilometers. Its depths plunge to 1,450 meters. Basalt walls rise 1,000 to 2,000 meters straight from the water's edge. The rock itself is ancient, tertiary basalt laid down between 50 and 60 million years ago, when volcanic activity split the North Atlantic apart and Greenland separated from Europe. First mapped by English explorer William Scoresby in 1822, the fjord remains, even now, one of the least visited places on Earth. Fewer people have stood on its inner shores than have summited Everest. In winter, the entire system freezes, solid ice, shore to shore. Polar bears walk across it. The silence is so absolute that visitors have described it as painful, a pressure against the eardrums, as if the absence of sound had physical weight. At the mouth of Scoresby Sund, on a rocky spit of land overlooking ice that stretches to the horizon, sits a town of 325 to 345 people. Inughuit, big house dwellers. The nearest Greenlandic settlement, Kulusuk, lies 831 kilometers away. Sea ice blocks access 8 to 9 months of the year. Residents carry rifles when leaving town, not as a precaution, as a necessity. Polar bears wander through with regularity. The town was founded in 1925 by explorer Einar Mikkelsen, who brought 80 Inuit settlers from Saqqaq to establish a Danish presence on the east coast. In 2025, Inughuit celebrates its 100th anniversary, a century of survival in one of the most isolated inhabited places on the planet. There are no roads in, no roads out. Supply ships reach the town only 3 to 4 months each year, when the ice briefly relents. Everything else arrives by helicopter, when the weather allows. Further south along the east coast, past ice-choked fjords and mountains that have never been named, lies Saqqaq, East Greenland's largest settlement. Between 1,900 and 2,000 people live here. They are Inuit, East Greenlanders who speak Inuit, a dialect so different from West Greenlandic that the two are barely mutually intelligible. Saqqaq remained unknown to the outside world until September 1st, 1884, when Danish naval lieutenant Gustav Holm rounded the southern tip of Greenland and discovered approximately 413 Inuit living in 13 winter camps along the east coast. They were living in what European observers described as a Stone Age cultural context. No metal tools, no written language, no contact with any other civilization for centuries, possibly millennia. They had developed a way of life so precisely adapted to this environment that nothing needed to change. Their kayaks were perfectly designed, their hunting methods worked, their social structures sustained them through the long polar nights and the brief, intense summers. The Inuit had developed their own traditions, their own songs, their own relationship with the ice. They had survived completely alone in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Today, Saqqaq is accessible only by helicopter from Kulusuk, a 10-minute flight. There are no roads to anywhere. The isolation that once protected the Inuit now threatens them. The challenges of remote Arctic life in the 21st century are different from those of the 19th, but no less difficult. East Greenland carries the highest rates of social crisis on the island. The same remoteness that preserved the drum dance and the skin kayak also concentrates the pressures of rapid cultural change into communities too small to absorb them. And yet, the Inuit endure. Their carvers still work in bone and soapstone, producing figures of bears, seals, and hunters that carry a stylistic lineage traceable back to the Dorset artists who preceded them by 1,000 years. Their drum dancers perform with a ferocity and intimacy that West Greenlandic performers openly admire. East Greenland is not a footnote. It is a mirror, reflecting both the resilience and the fragility of a culture balanced on the edge of ice and time. But Greenland's story is not only a story of ice and survival, it is also a story of what powerful nations do to places they consider strategically useful, and what they leave behind. On April 9, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Denmark. The occupation lasted 5 years. But Denmark's most distant territory, Greenland, was beyond the reach of German forces. Greenland's administrators invoked emergency powers and declared a form of self-rule. For the first time in 2 centuries, the island governed itself. Then, on April 9, 1941, exactly 1 year after the invasion, Danish ambassador Henrik Kaufmann signed a defense agreement with the United States. He acted against the explicit orders of his occupied government. He argued that protecting Greenland was protecting Denmark. The agreement made Greenland a de facto American protectorate, and it would reshape the island forever. The reason was ice, but not the kind that covered the land. Deep in South Greenland, at a place called Inughuit, lay the world's only significant natural deposit of cryolite, a mineral essential for extracting aluminium from ore. Without cryolite, the process required vastly more energy and expense. By 1943, America was producing 43% of all global aluminum, the metal from which bombers, fighters, and transport aircraft were built. Without Greenland's cryolite, large-scale aircraft manufacturing would have been effectively impossible. The mineral that won the air war came from a mine in a fjord that most Americans could not find on a map. The P-51 Mustang, the B-17 Flying Fortress, the B-29 Superfortress, every aluminum airframe that rolled off an American assembly line owed its existence, in part, to a white crystalline mineral pulled from a frozen hillside in South Greenland. The United States built 14 military installations across Greenland, each designated with the code name Bluey, followed by a number. Bluey West 1 at Saqqaq served as headquarters for the Coast Guard's Greenland Patrol and a critical refueling stop for aircraft crossing the Atlantic to Britain. Bluey West 8, Kangerlussuaq, would eventually become Greenland's main international airport. The cryolite mine at Inughuit operated until 1987, when its deposits were finally exhausted. The war ended. The bases did not. In 1951, as the Cold War deepened, the United States launched one of the most audacious construction projects in military history, Operation Blue Jay. 120 ships, 12,000 workers, 300,000 tons of cargo, all converging on Greenland's remote northwest coast, 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle, to build a military base that would anchor American defense in the Arctic for the next 7 decades. The construction was completed in a single building season, the brief Arctic summer when temperatures rose above freezing and the sea ice retreated far enough for ships to reach shore. Workers lived in tents and temporary barracks, laboring around the clock under the midnight sun, pouring concrete in conditions that defied every engineering manual. It was named Thule Air Base, later renamed Pituffik Space Base, in April 2023 to acknowledge Greenlandic heritage and the installation's evolving mission under the United States Space Force. Today, the 12th Space Warning Squadron operates a phased array radar with 3,589 antenna elements, capable of detecting objects more than 3,000 miles away. A 10,000-foot runway handles more than 3,000 flights annually. The base maintains the world's northernmost deep water port. From Pituffik, American radar monitors the Giuk Gap, the maritime passage between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, through which any Russian submarine must pass to reach the Atlantic. The shortest flight path from Washington to Moscow passes directly over Greenland. The island is not just land, it is a watchtower. But the construction of this watchtower came at a cost that was paid by others. In 1953, 116 Inughuit, 27 families, were told they had 4 days to leave their homes. The community at Thule had lived in that region for generations. Their hunting grounds, their burial sites, the places where their grandparents were born, and their children had taken their first steps on the ice. All of it lay within the shadow of what was becoming America's northernmost military base. They were relocated to Saqqaq, 130 kilometers north, in Arctic winter, with 4 days' notice. Some families left behind belongings, tools, and provisions they could not carry. They were promised the move would be temporary. It was not. It remains the only forced relocation for which Denmark has ever issued an apology to its indigenous population. The Inughuit did not choose to move. They were moved to make room for radar, for runways, for the machinery of superpower confrontation. But Thule was not the only secret the ice was asked to keep. In 1959, 205 kilometers east of Thule, beneath the surface of the ice sheet, at an elevation of 6,600 feet, the United States Army began construction on a facility they called Camp Century. 21 tunnels, totaling 3 kilometers in length, living quarters, a mess hall, a chapel, a barber shop, a library, a nuclear reactor, the world's first portable nuclear power plant, designation PM2A, all buried beneath the ice. The soldiers stationed there lived in a subterranean city of ice. They ate hot meals, watched movies, attended church services, got haircuts, all hundreds of meters beneath the surface of the ice sheet, in tunnels carved by special equipment and lit by nuclear-generated electricity. Officially, Camp Century was a research station, a testament to American engineering in extreme environments. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. Its true purpose, classified until 1997, was to test the feasibility of a plan called Project Iceworm. The concept was breathtaking in its ambition and terrifying in its implications. 600 nuclear missiles, deployed across 4,000 kilometers of tunnels carved beneath the Greenland ice sheet, covering 52,000 square miles, an area 3 times the size of Denmark itself. The missiles would be mobile, mounted on rail systems, constantly moving beneath the ice to avoid detection. A nuclear arsenal hidden inside a glacier, aimed at the Soviet Union, powered by portable reactors, crewed by soldiers living in frozen tunnels. The ice sheet would be both the weapon's shield and its hiding place. It failed. The ice proved unstable. The tunnels compressed, both vertically and horizontally. By mid-1962, the ceiling of the reactor room had dropped 5 feet. The ice was not static. It moved, it shifted, it squeezed. The frozen fortress was slowly being crushed by the very thing meant to protect it. The reactor was removed in 1964. Camp Century was abandoned between 1966 and 1967. The tunnels were sealed and left to the ice. Left behind, beneath the surface, inside the collapsing tunnels, were more than 47,000 gallons of radioactive waste, 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, 24 million liters of untreated sewage, biological waste, chemical contaminants. All of it was expected to remain sealed forever, entombed by the ice sheet's relentless accumulation. Scientists now predict that climate change will expose Camp Century's buried waste by 2090. In April 2024, NASA radar detected the remains of the camp approximately 100 feet beneath the surface, still sinking, still contaminated, still waiting. The ice that was supposed to keep America's secrets is melting, and the secrets are rising. Nine years after Camp Century was abandoned, the ice at Thule witnessed something worse. January 21st, 1968. AB-52G Stratofortress, part of Operation Chrome Dome, America's airborne nuclear deterrent patrols, caught fire at 35,000 feet. The crew ejected. The bomber crashed onto sea ice 7.5 miles west of Thule Air Base. It was carrying 4 B-28FI thermonuclear bombs, each with a yield of 1.1 megatons, roughly 70 times the destructive power of the weapon dropped on Hiroshima. On impact, conventional explosive triggers in each bomb detonated. The nuclear cores did not achieve fission. There was no nuclear explosion, but the blasts ripped the weapons apart, scattering radioactive plutonium, uranium-235, americium, and tritium across a 1 by 3 mile area of ice and snow. Parts of the fourth bomb's secondary stage, the thermonuclear component, were never found. They are believed to have sunk through the ice into the waters of North Star Bay, where they remain to this day. Denmark had declared itself a nuclear-free zone in 1957. The crash revealed that Denmark had tacitly permitted American nuclear weapons to fly over and be stored near its sovereign territory for years. The resulting scandal, known as Thulegate, erupted in 1995 when classified documents were made public. Operation Chrome Dome was terminated. The airborne nuclear patrols over the Arctic ended. But the plutonium in the ice and the missing piece of a thermonuclear weapon at the bottom of a Greenlandic bay did not. Some things, once released, cannot be taken back. Radioactive waste beneath the ice. Plutonium scattered on a frozen bay. A thermonuclear component lying somewhere on the seabed. An entire indigenous community displaced with 4 days' warning. This is what strategic interest looks like when it is written not in policy papers, but on the land itself. And so, we arrive at the question that has pursued this island for more than a century and a half. The question in the title. The question that brought you here. Why has America tried, again and again, to buy Greenland? The answer is not one story. It is 4. The first attempt came in 1867. Secretary of State William Seward, fresh from purchasing Alaska for $7.2 million, a deal mocked as Seward's folly, turned his attention northward. He had a vision of American dominion stretching from the tropics to the Arctic. He had purchased the Virgin Islands from Denmark. He had taken Alaska from Russia. Greenland was next. He commissioned surveys of Greenland and worked with former Treasury Secretary Robert Walker to advocate acquiring both Greenland and Iceland for $5.5 million. Walker argued the purchase would help America command the commerce of the world. No formal offer was made. Congress was distracted, preoccupied with criticism of the Alaska Purchase and the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson. The idea died quietly, filed away, forgotten. but not permanently. The second attempt came 79 years later. The Cold War was dawning. The Soviet Union had tested no nuclear weapon yet, but American military planners already understood what Greenland's position on the globe meant. On December 14, 1946, Secretary of State James Burns sat across from Danish Foreign Minister Gustav Rasmussen and made an offer. $100 million in gold, plus Alaskan oil rights. In today's currency, approximately $1.5 billion. The offer remained classified for 45 years. It was not declassified until 1991. A State Department official who attended a Joint Chiefs of Staff meeting recorded the consensus with devastating clarity. Practically every member believed Greenland is completely worthless to Denmark, but that control of Greenland is indispensable to the safety of the United States. Denmark said no. But Denmark agreed to military cooperation. Denmark joined NATO as a founding member in 1949. And in 1951, Denmark signed the Greenland Defense Agreement, allowing the construction of Thule Air Base and granting America a permanent military foothold in the Arctic. Denmark said no to the sale, and yes to nearly everything else. The pattern would become familiar. America could not own Greenland, but it could station troops there, build radar there, test nuclear technology there, fly nuclear-armed bombers over it. Ownership, it turned out, was less important than access. And access had already been granted. For 7 decades, the questions slept. Then, on August 16, 2019, the Wall Street Journal reported that the President of the United States had discussed purchasing Greenland as a personal project. By August 18th, the President confirmed his interest publicly. "It's massive. That should be part of the United States." Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, responded with a single word that echoed around the world. She called the proposal absurd. "Greenland is not Danish," she said. "Greenland belongs to Greenland." 2 days later, the president cancelled his planned state visit to Denmark. The diplomatic chill was immediate and sharp. Greenland's foreign minister was more direct. "We are open for business," he said, "not for sale." But the story did not end there. In December 2024, the pursuit resumed, this time with an intensity that made the 2019 episode look like a passing remark. On December 22nd, the president declared American control of Greenland an absolute necessity for national security. On January 6, 2025, he threatened very high tariffs against Denmark. On January 7th, he refused to rule out military force. That same day, his son flew to Greenland on a private visit. In March 2025, the president told Congress, "I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it." On March 28th, the vice president became the highest-ranking American official ever to visit Pituffik Space Base. And in January 2026, the United States announced 10% tariffs on all Danish imports, stating the tariffs would continue until a deal was reached for what was described as the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Greenland's response was unanimous. Every political party in Greenland's parliament, Inatsisartut, issued a joint statement. The words were simple, direct, and final. "We do not want to become part of the United States. We do not want to be Americans." A January 2025 poll found that 85% of Greenlanders oppose becoming part of the United States. 7 European leaders from Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom issued a joint statement defending Greenland's sovereignty. The island that everyone wants only to belong to itself. But why? What makes this remote, ice-covered island so valuable that the most powerful nation on Earth has pursued it across 4 presidencies and 158 years? The answer lies partly beneath the ice and partly on the map. Greenland holds an estimated 36 million tons of rare earth minerals: neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, elements essential for electric vehicle motors, wind turbines, smartphones, missile guidance systems, and advanced military technology. Elements that the modern world cannot function without. If fully developed, Greenland's reserves could rank second in the world, behind only China, which currently controls more than 60% of global rare earth production. For any nation seeking independence from Chinese supply chains, Greenland is not merely attractive, it is essential. The Kvanefjeld deposit alone contains approximately 270,000 tons of uranium, the 8th largest deposit on Earth. But in 2021, Greenland's parliament passed a law prohibiting mining of deposits with uranium concentrations above 100 parts per million. Kvanefjeld contains 250 to 350. The law effectively blocked development. Beneath the same ancient rock, rubies formed 2.9 to 3.1 billion years ago, among the oldest gemstones on Earth. The Apalutok mine opened in 2017 to extract them. It has since shut down. The minerals matter, but the map matters more. Greenland controls the GIUK gap, the passage between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, through which any vessel must pass to travel between the Arctic and the Atlantic. The shortest flight path from Washington to Moscow crosses directly over Greenland. As Arctic sea ice retreats, new shipping routes, the Northern Sea Route, the Northwest Passage, are becoming navigable for longer each year. In July 2024, a senior American general described Greenland as the shortest and least defended threat vector to North America. China, too, has noticed. In 2018, despite being nowhere near the Arctic, China declared itself a near-Arctic state and announced a Polar Silk Road initiative. Chinese companies attempted to acquire a former Danish naval base in 2016, blocked on security grounds. They bid on airport construction in Nuuk, Ilulissat, and Qaqortoq in 2018 and 2019, withdrawn under American and Danish pressure. Most Chinese mineral and energy projects in Greenland have since been paused or cancelled. But the interest has not disappeared. It has simply become quieter. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. With each degree of warming, new shipping routes open, new resources become accessible, and the strategic calculus of the world's great powers shifts. Greenland sits at the intersection of 3 continents' ambitions, and the ice that once made it unreachable is the very thing that is now making it indispensable. Because the ice is leaving. Not dramatically, not in a single catastrophic event, but steadily, relentlessly, like a bank account being drained, one withdrawal at a time, so slowly that the owner does not notice until the balance is nearly gone. 264 gigatons per year. That is how much ice Greenland loses now, every year. The equivalent of filling more than 100 million Olympic swimming pools and pouring them into the ocean. Between 2002 and 2024, the ice sheet lost approximately 4,800 gigatons. The 1970s were the last decade of net growth. Since 1996, 28 consecutive years, the ice sheet has shrunk. The loss has accelerated. In the 1980s, Greenland lost 51 gigatons per year. By the 2010s, it was losing 286. The curve bends upward, like a warning written in water. In the summer of 2019, a single heat wave melted enough ice in a single day to cover the entire state of Florida in 2 inches of water. Satellite images showed rivers of meltwater streaming across the surface of the ice sheet, a landscape that was never supposed to have rivers. Greenland currently adds 0.8 millimeters per year to global sea levels. Since 1972, the total contribution has been 13.7 millimeters. Small numbers, but they are cumulative, and they are accelerating. Scientists estimate that 1.7 to 2.3 degrees Celsius of warming would push the ice sheet past a tipping point, a threshold beyond which complete melting becomes inevitable. Not in a decade, not in a century, but over millennia, irreversibly. A process that, once begun, cannot be reversed by any technology humans possess. The world has already warmed approximately 1.5 degrees. The margin between where we are and where the tipping point begins is measured not in generations, but in fractions of a degree. 7.4 meters of sea level rise, locked inside the ice, waiting. At the very top of the world, at 77 degrees 28 minutes north latitude, just 1,100 kilometers from the North Pole, sits Saqqaq. 619 to 646 people. More sled dogs than human residents. Only 2 supply ships per year, one in July, one in September. For 3.5 months, the sun does not rise. The world exists in shades of blue and black, lit only by moonlight reflected off snow and the occasional shimmer of the northern lights. The Inuit call this period Inughuit, the deep winter. Sound carries differently in the darkness. A dog team can be heard from 5 kilometers away. The crack of sea ice splitting echoes through the fjord like a gunshot. Then, for 5 months, it does not set. The sun circles the horizon like a slow searchlight, casting shadows that rotate but never disappear. Sleep becomes negotiation. Time becomes suggestion. The hunters travel the ice at 2 in the morning because the light is the same as noon, and the seals are less cautious. The Inughuit of Saqqaq are the descendants of those relocated from Thule in 1953. They are the northernmost naturally inhabited community on Earth. They are the only Greenlandic Inuit who traditionally lived in igloos. And they are among the last people on Earth who still hunt narwhal from skin kayaks, who still run dog teams across sea ice that grows less reliable each year, who still prepare kiviak in seal carcasses buried under stones. In Saqqaq, children learn to read the ice before they learn to read books. They learn which shade of white means safe footing, and which means thin ice over deep water. They learn to read the behavior of dogs, how the lead dog lifts its head when it smells a seal's breathing hole beneath the snow. Their elders carry knowledge that exists nowhere in any library, knowledge of currents, of animal migration, of weather patterns that are changing faster than the words that describe them. When an elder dies in Saqqaq, the loss is not just personal, it is encyclopedic. Their way of life is not a museum exhibit, it is not a tourist attraction, it is a living answer to the question of what it means to persist, to continue when the world is changing faster than memory can hold. But persistence has its costs. Greenland's suicide rate stands at approximately 81 per 100,000, 5 times the global average. 8% of all deaths on the island are self-inflicted. Among young men aged 15 to 29, the rate reaches 400 to 500 per 100,000, a figure that defies comprehension. The rates are highest in East Greenland, 3 times the national average. Alcohol is involved in roughly half of all attempts. 59% of violent incidents on the island are alcohol-related. The causes are not simple. They never are. Rapid cultural change, geographic isolation, the legacy of colonialism, the erosion of traditional identity, the collision between ancient rhythms and modern expectations, all of it converges in communities too small and too far apart to absorb the pressure. In the space of 3 generations, the colonial went from a self-sufficient hunting society governed by its own customs to a welfare-dependent territory governed by Danish law. The sled dog was replaced by the snowmobile. The sod house was replaced by the prefabricated block. The drum song was banned and then restored. The language was marginalized and then revived. The wounds of rapid transformation do not heal on the surface. They settle deeper, into silence, into isolation, into the particular loneliness of a young person standing at the edge of a frozen fjord in a town of 400, wondering what it means to be both ancient and modern at the same time. The same remoteness that preserved the drum dance and the skin kayak also concentrates grief into spaces where there is no escape from it. Greenland is addressing it, slowly, with programs, with counselors, with community-based initiatives that draw on traditional values. But the work is generational, and the distances are vast, and the resources are limited. And yet, the dream endures. A January 2025 poll found that 56% of Greenlanders favor independence. Not from Denmark's protection, not from its culture, from its authority. But 45% oppose independence if it means a decline in living standards. And the mathematics of sovereignty are stark. Denmark's annual block grant, approximately $600 million, or 4.14 billion Danish kroner, provides 50 to 51% of Greenland's government revenue. 18 to 19% of the island's entire gross domestic product. Denmark also pays for police, military, courts, prisons, environmental protection, and scientific research. An additional 204 million euros per year. Independence without an economic foundation is not freedom. It is exposure. The fishing industry provides the majority of Greenland's export revenue, primarily cold water shrimp and Greenland halibut, sold to markets in Denmark, China, Japan, and the European Union. But fishing alone cannot replace the Danish subsidy, and the rare earth minerals that could transform the economy remain locked beneath layers of legal prohibition, environmental concern, and geopolitical competition. Under the 2009 Self-Government Act, Greenland was recognized as a people under international law with the right to self-determination. The Greenlandic language became the sole official language. A draft constitution for an independent Greenland was presented in April 2023. The path is being built. Whether the resources exist to walk it, whether the ice will last long enough, whether the minerals will prove extractable, whether the fish stocks will hold, whether the world will allow 57,000 people to determine their own fate, remains the question of our time. There is a place on Earth where time moves differently, where glaciers carry the memory of 100,000 winters, where sharks swim through centuries without urgency, where a drum song older than Rome still rises from a circle of listeners on the tundra. Greenland is not what the maps suggest, a white void at the top of the world, empty and waiting to be claimed. It is full of ice that remembers, full of people who endure, full of stories that have outlasted the empires that tried to own them. The Saqqaq came, the Dorset came, the Norse came and vanished. The Danes came and stayed. The Americans came with gold and radar and nuclear missiles buried under ice. And through all of it, through 4,500 years of arrival and departure, of colonization and resistance, of ice ages and warming seas, the cryolite remained. The ice remained. The silence remained. Not because it was easy, because this is home. Home is not a word that translates simply in kalalisut. It is nuna, land, earth, ground, the place where your feet know the way without being told. It is the smell of seal meat drying in the wind. It is the sound of sled runners on hard snow at 4 in the morning. It is the color of an iceberg at midnight when the sun refuses to set and the whole world turns gold. You cannot buy Nuna. You cannot trade it. You cannot threaten it into compliance with tariffs or military posture. It exists in the space between a people and their landscape, a space that no treaty, no transaction, no act of geopolitical will can occupy. The ice sheet loses 264 gigatons per year. The Greenland shark drifts through water unchanged for 4 centuries. The drum sounds in a heated hall where children learn songs their great-grandparents were forbidden to sing. And at the edge of the ice fjord in Ilulissat, a tower of ice the size of a cathedral separates from the glacier with a sound like the world splitting open, then settles slowly into water that carries it south toward a future no one can predict. Greenland is not for sale. It never was. If this journey moved you, if you felt the weight of the ice and the silence between the words, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new documentary. Like this video if it opened a window to a place you had never imagined, and share it with someone who needs to know that there are still corners of this planet that refuse to be ordinary. Leave a comment and tell us, which part of Greenland's story surprised you the most? Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next road.